Okay, so we are live. We'll just give this a few seconds because sometimes it can take a few seconds to show up on the right channels. And hopefully, Kirk, somebody from our wonderful team is awake at this hour and can tell us if they can't hear the audio or if we're not live for some reason. But anyway, I'm going to get started now because 20 seconds should be enough. My name is Celia Polkinghorn, and this is Kirk Drage. We are from LeapSheep, and our big mission is to flip the 95% startup failure rate. We have started this live stream at 7:30 in the morning in Adelaide in the hopes that we're able to get to all the, enough of the time zones, as many of the time zones as possible, to, answer your startup questions. We have a whole load of questions that have come in from TikTok in the last couple of days. So we'll be trying to get through as many of those as possible. But there is a link to join us live below if you wish to do so. If you wish to come on and actually ask something in depth about your startup, you can do that. Oh, Sarah's joined us. Amazing. We've got Sarah from Seattle. Hi, Sarah. Wow. 3 LeapSheep team members all at once.
Look out.
Yeah. Kirk, Sarah, and I are here to answer all of your startup questions. But if you are not familiar with LeapSheep and you're not familiar with our mission to flip the 95% startup failure rate, you're probably thinking, who are these randoms on the internet talking about startups? And pretty volatile space to be talking about if you don't know what you're talking about, hence the 95% startup failure rate. So let's just start this live stream by explaining our position a bit, Kirk, where LeapSheep comes from in all of this, how we're different to, all the other players, I guess, in the startup world, and who we're trying to help, essentially, that doesn't get access to the usual great help when it comes to building startups.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe just talk a little bit about the startup space in general and why it's such a great space to play in.
Yeah.
And it's it may seem pretty obvious, but it's the area of the economy where we commercialize new ideas, and it's generally people that have got enormous amounts of passion, enormous amounts of vision, that are not happy with the status quo, and they see opportunities, typically using technology, to create new solutions, disruptive solutions that change the way that we do things. And I think I'm very personally passionate about that, and I love working with those kind of people. I love those kind of people being successful. I love being around those kind of people. And if you look at the success in the economy in terms of creating jobs and creating wealth, venture-backed companies, particularly in America where there's lots of data, have had a huge outsized impact. And you can see that on the listed company set today, where most of the largest companies on the planet are all technology based today. And that just shows that this is where most of the economic activity is going. So it's a good sector of the economy for people to be in. I started my journey in the startup world almost 20 years ago. I was still working at Microsoft at the time. And at the time, Microsoft had a presence in Silicon Valley and had done for a long period of time, but they decided that they would set up a global startup division, and really spread this out to help the next generation of technology entrepreneurs. Like a lot of people that started in the startup land, I took on that role with really very little experience. I'd had my own small business, but as you learn, as you go down this rabbit hole, that's really nothing like running a startup. So I'd run businesses before, and I'd certainly been part of managing businesses before, but again, you learn that that's nothing like what building a startup is. And so that turned out to be a fairly steep learning curve, although when you start out on this journey, you don't necessarily realize just how steep that learning curve is. So I spent 3 years with Microsoft managing the Asia part of the ecosystem. We had teams in many of the countries around the Asia Pacific region. I think the first year we recruited about 8,000 startups, and that doubled in that 3-year time frame.
Wow.
We managed about 20 innovation centers, which were accelerators, incubators, technology showcase centers around the region, and we tried all different kinds of models, and I just learned a whole ton. And at the end of that period, I decided to leave Microsoft, and I joined a venture firm based in Singapore. And worked in and invested in startups for the next few years and moved to Silicon Valley with those companies, because the thesis was invest in companies in Asia, move them to Silicon Valley, at least their sales and product teams to Silicon Valley. So I spent a lot of time there. And I think during that period this is when I was really, first employee into a startup, and was really in the boat instead of on the outside advising and helping and supporting startups in that role that I was in Microsoft, and actually raising capital, actually finding customers, actually building product, actually building team. And when you've got money, that seems to go quite well.
Yeah.
You think like, well, we're making progress, we're getting customers, we're pushing product out the door, our team's growing.
Yeah.
I became an investor during that period. But it's not until several years down the track that you realize the decisions that you've made perhaps weren't the best decisions, and perhaps you didn't know as much as you thought you knew. Because when that money starts to run out and you really have to make the traction to get the follow-on capital or get to cash flow break even. And so that's at the point, and this was nearly 10 years into my journey, I guess, that I really realized what it meant to build startups.
Yeah.
And so the time that it takes to really understand is quite extreme. So when I came back to Australia after that whole period and decided to start my own startup, I thought the biggest problem that I could see in the world to solve, and this is, I love Peter Diamandis, like if you're going to build $1 billion company, find a problem that's massive and giant and global.
$1 billion problem, yeah.
The biggest problem that I could see is just the amount of money that was wasted in the startup space by startups, angel investors, venture capital, just not understanding the journey, because it is just such a difficult journey to understand, and the timeframes and the feedback loop is so very, very long.
Yeah, 100%. And I just felt so lucky to meet you guys when I did, because I'd been on a massive, big organic marketing journey myself, developing a protocol for small and medium-sized service-based businesses to own and control their organic marketing strategy, so that they didn't have to outsource blindly, to marketing agencies and blow money, which is a massive, big problem. And so, I felt really good about myself, after 4 or 5 years. Like, I really nailed this. I've got this system down. My clients are winning awards. They're opening newer, bigger offices because they can't grow fast enough. They're opening international offices. And I was like, I've got this. Then I got thrown a curveball in the form of 3 startups. Only I didn't realize they were startups because I didn't really understand the definition of what startup was at that time. And I started serving them, in the same way that I serve service-based businesses with my protocol. And I was like, oh, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? And it was, fate from the universe that was exactly the same time that I met you guys and LeapSheep. And we were able to work out really, really quickly, oh, these are product-based startups. 2 of them realize it, 1 of them doesn't. And this is why it's not working, because they are taking the wrong product to market. And, obviously having someone spend money on your service and not be able to get them a result is super, super, off-putting. It's like, oh, what's going on here? This feels terrible. And I was lucky enough to be in a position where I hadn't scaled a massive agency. So I could just say, oh, well, I can, pivot here. I know everyone hates that word now after COVID, but, I can pivot here. I don't have, some sort of like, I don't have any kind of like structure to protect here. And let's pivot to, include innovation risk management in this protocol. And that's how we came to work together. And thank God for that, right? Because,
That's right.
One of the biggest problems that we see in this space is all the money that gets blown on marketing, all the money that gets blown on software development agencies, because those businesses do not understand innovation risk management. They do not understand what pre-revenue market validation means, or if they do, they don't do it because it's not easy to do. You don't blame them for not providing the service. But, at the same time, I think it's irresponsible to accept business from a startup that, clearly or not clearly isn't taking the right product to market. So that's our position. That's where we come from. If everyone's like, who are these randos on the internet talking about startups? It's a very, very, very unique position, right, to be in. And that's why we're able to help in a very unique way. Sarah, I'd love to hear from you before we dive into questions. What's your background with all of this?
Yeah, so I started in, I actually became an accountant. I trained as an accountant at KPMG. I was awful at it. My attention to detail for very, very small amounts of money was just not there. I qualified, left, and started a career in the Department of Health in the UK, and which was all around building frameworks and strategies for helping people using healthcare services like dentists, doctors, hospitals to make sure that they were getting great outcomes. And really, that was the first time in the whole healthcare market that there were regulations and protocols that were around outcomes for people, not just kind of prescriptive, feature-driven health and safety protocols. I did that for 5-6 years, and then moved to Seattle, which is where I live now from London. And then as I had the good fortune to meet Catherine, who's the co-founder of LeapSheep with Kirk, in France. We'd known each other previously, and we spent the entire weekend talking about this new business that she'd created, which was LeapSheep. And I'd never heard of startups before, and then suddenly I was hooked. And then I started working for LeapSheep, I think about 6 to 9 months later. And then I've worked there ever since. So I started off doing research to build the frameworks that LeapSheep rely on in order to build out our system for supporting startups. And I spent several years on that research side of things, helping to build out the framework on which we've based our startup builder system. And then gradually started to build out the workshops, work with founders. And I'm now a startup building advisor with LeapSheep, and I've worked with literally hundreds of startups from all over the world, using our frameworks to guide them towards product market fit and scale.
Yes, so good. So Sarah and I have hundreds of case studies behind us. Kirk has thousands of case studies behind him. So yeah, we see multiple startups every day. It's just and we is repeatable, right? The mistakes are repeatable and the ways around it are repeatable, which a lot, why would you understand that if you didn't have this experience?
Yeah, I think that's one of the unique things that we bring to the startup ecosystem is this entire industry is an industry that's sort of built on lived experience. The very top performers in the industry, if you think about the top VC firms, you think about the top accelerator programs, which I put at the pinnacle of this industry, they're all based on brilliant minds that have got loads and loads and loads of experience, and it's that lived experience that allows them to do what they do, decades at the top of this industry. What that means is it's a very, very difficult path for anyone else to follow. There's no body of knowledge. There's no systematic way of doing things. There's no protocols. There's no diagnostic tools. There's no prescriptive interventions that you can offer based on those diagnostics. And that's what we've solved. We've built all of those things. We've decided not to become a fund, which allows us to work with more companies, because if you become a fund, obviously you just have a certain amount of capital that you can deploy. So we didn't want to go down that path so that we could remain unconstrained. And we're now using training and process, technology and AI to allow us to scale this to the masses to really radically change startup success rates.
Yeah, that's right. So it's super unfair that if you've got an incredible idea to make a massive social impact and obviously make a really profitable company and build wealth for yourself as well, that you really don't have access to the tools and the systems to be able to build the idea that you want to build. You'd have to spend all of your time studying the best in the space and trying to work out and reverse engineer, work out their how. And actually, before we dive into the questions, let's just cover that really quickly, Kirk. Let's just talk about who we look up to and who we, sort of align with in the startup space, just so people know what we think is good and they can judge for themselves whether they agree with us or not.
Yeah, great question. So those people with the lived experience that I think are out there talking about it and have been doing so for 10 plus years. People like Paul Graham that started Y Combinator. People like Steve Blank, who was the mentor to Eric Ries that wrote the Lean Startup. People like Fred Wilson from Union Square Ventures. There's a large list of people that are reasonably well known in the industry that have put out a lot of information. Some of it, I will say, is relevant to people on this journey that's repeatable. Others less so. Some of the frameworks that are out there, like Blitzscale, for example, I don't think apply to the vast majority of startups because it needs access to large amounts of capital. It's just not appropriate for the vast majority of people. So you do need to pick and choose the information, and that's what we've done. We've curated it, we've connected it, integrated it, and made it very capital efficient to allow people to undertake the journey.
Great. All right, with that, let's get started with these questions because there are heaps. We're not going to be able to get through them all today. But actually, we got the first one we got on LinkedIn was the same as the first one we got on TikTok. So thank you for this question, Parvez, on our LinkedIn post about this. Are you willing to share insights on why market research is crucial when developing a startup? Same question as first one on TikTok, which is I'm currently stuck figuring out how to do the market research. Any help with that?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question, and a lot of building a successful startup comes down to timing. There's a great talk from the leader of IDEO on the not IDEO, Idea Labs TED talk on this, where they did a longitudinal study and found out that one of the most important factors around building a startup is timing. And when you think about why that is the case, it's because generally a startup comes into being because there's some technology that's crossed a price performance threshold or has crossed a threshold of technology availability. Think about a company like Uber, for example. Prior to the period that Uber started, phones didn't have GPSs in them, and so that company couldn't have existed. And so you enter an era when GPS becomes pervasive and everybody's got a GPS on their phone. That company is now possible. So if you started that company 5 years too early, you wouldn't have been successful. If you started that company 5 years too late, someone else would have beaten you to the punch. Solar panels is another example where you've just got this declining cost and increasing price performance. Different segments of the market are going to come in to those solutions at different price points, and so you have the enthusiasts, the people that absolutely need solar because they're off grid. They might be in the middle of Africa or Australia or wherever, and they're going to be willing to pay more, but they're relatively small parts of the market. And so when the price gets down to a certain level, the larger parts of the market come in. That's when those businesses that really take off and can grow large customer bases are possible. And so if you're not looking at trends, technology trends, social trends, industry trends, different industries have different adoption rates for different technologies and social things. If you're not looking at all those trends, you're probably not able to predict those opportunities, and they are very predictable. And someone like Ray Kurzweil, for example, is the master of prediction of technology curves, he's one person that's worth following and reading some of his books to understand this a bit better.
Yeah, so bringing it high level to eye level, Sarah, this is your job. Like practical steps. What are the practical steps we teach in stage A of our startup builder system to help people actually execute market research properly and know that they've done it right and know that they can move on to the next stage?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few steps. So Kirk's labeled most of the different types of research. You want to have a really clear idea of exactly what is your vision for the impact that you want to have long term, and the people that you want to impact. You then want to look at the industry and specifically what are the trends within that industry, and potentially also within society as well, societal trends, industry trends, and technology trends. That's all within primarily industry research. There's also the element of where are people spending? So with your customers that you think are your particular potential customers, like, are they spending money on the kind of solution that you're thinking of? Because then, of course, you can understand if there's value that you can capture. Airbnb is a great example of this. Who would have thought that the kind of Craigslist style sleeping on somebody's couch would become this massive company? And of course, some of it was around trends and timing, like the Great Recession. That was kind of critical to people having to generate new ways of making money. Plus, they segmented from other markets. So that's really a lot around industry research. There's also competitive research, which I think Kirk, you didn't mention, but is crucial. So in the area that you're focused on, who are the other competitors? How are your customers solving the problem that you think that they have? Do they know about other solutions? And you really want to think hard about exactly how people are solving the problem, and also trying to predict like what other big players in the market, like Amazon is a great example of this. Are any big players likely to come into the market that you think you are? Or is there a blue ocean, which is where you can create new value in a new way? So those typically, in terms of actually how you can package this research together, one of the great ways of doing it is to add all of your hypotheses into a pitch deck template and then start to map them out with research and data that sits underneath it. If you do want to go in and really kind of clarify everything that you know with everything that you want to find, then having a research report that sits underneath that pitch deck is ideal. And of course, you can build that up over time. And if and when you decide to seek capital, all of that research will be the kind of information that that sophisticated investors are going to want to see, so that they've got that evidence of validation.
Yeah, and on that point as well, sometimes it can be a little bit counterintuitive for some founders, this activity so early on in the journey, but this stage A, this market research stage, is also really the best time to start liaising with investors, right? Whether you're going to take capital or not, whether you know you're going to take capital or not, it's just great to start building that relationship, because you can get great feedback from people who see a lot of cases as to, you know, what do they think of the idea, right? But also, crucially, you're starting your relationship early before you need money, right? So you're not coming to people when you're desperate, needing dollars and needing to be bailed out, right? Anything else that you would say about that?
Absolutely critical. I think if you can identify, and again, think hard about the types of people you want to meet early on, because at that early stage, you want to be meeting values aligned investors. So people who invest in the kind of space, you know, say you're in the agriculture tech field, then look for ag tech investors. And a great place to look is websites like Signal and FX, because you can then criteria those kind of investors. You can think about, you know, at the very early stage, you want to be talking to angel investors, perhaps early stage VCs, just having conversations with them, you know, really, really clear. You're not raising, you have no intention of raising, you're fine, thank you, but you're just having these kind of conversations. There's nothing more alluring than a founder who is smart, who really knows what they're talking about and is interested to make relationships.
Yeah, that's great.
And the same is true for customers. This pitch deck that you build, take that to potential customers and take that to industry thought leaders and ask for their advice. Say, you know, I'm thinking about building this company. It might sound like a crazy idea, but just hear me out. What do you think? And of course, you're an industry contrarian. You're a startup founder. Of course, you have to be contrarian. You know, if you're Uber and you go to the taxi industry, you know, you're not going to expect a rousing reception, but you are going to find people that go, wow, you know what, you're on the leading edge here, and I think you're onto something. And if you don't get out of the building and test that market research, then you just don't have as much data as you could or you should have.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll just sort of, dot the end of this by saying there's a huge difference between doing your market research and doing your user research, but we won't dive into that just yet because there's a dot to connect here. Somebody asked, what do I do about the sort of like imposter syndrome I feel when I'm, looking at trying to build out my new idea? You know, I'm in an industry that's not my industry, and there are other experts in the space saying, I don't belong here, or my idea won't work, or it's been tried or something. And we just mentioned both Airbnb and Uber then, which were along with Netflix, intruders in their industry, true disruptors. So Kirk, what advice would you have for somebody who says that?
Such a good question. Apart from becoming a sociopath, the way forward is, one, you've got to have a good support network around you. I think people that are going to believe in you. So if you've got co-founders in particular is so valuable for this. But having people around you that you can go back to recenter yourself, because having new ideas and wanting to change the way the world is not crazy, but a lot of people will tell you that it is. They'll tell you it's too hard. They'll tell you it's not worth your time. They'll tell you that it can't be done. They'll tell you all the reasons under the sun, and you've got to be able to go forward under those conditions, because at the end of the day, you're generally trying to change a system that has inertia that doesn't want to be changed.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be prepared. You got to be mentally prepared for that pushback.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to deal with that. I mean, eventually, if you get in enough time and you hear nothing but but knows, and nothing but there's no problem here to be solved. This problem is not important enough. The technology is too hard, or the capital's required is too much. You eventually have to listen to that feedback, but expect to go a reasonable amount way forward with a fair bit of emotional pain, I'd say, to figure that out.
The other element is if people in the industry are telling you no, or it's too hard or too difficult, that doesn't necessarily mean everything. Talk to their customers, really get to understand the challenges and the problems that their customers are facing, if this is the industry you want to go into, because that is where you're going to find the new insights and the new knowledge that no one else is particularly paying attention to.
That's a great point.
Yeah, if you're Netflix and you're talking to blockbuster thought leaders and all that, it's like, well, look at the two companies now. So really get to know the customers and the individuals who are using products and services in this industry, and that's where you'll get the clue as to whether there's something to go after or not.
And there's more kind of wow factors around that Netflix blockbuster case, isn't there? Wasn't there an offer at one time for Blockbuster to buy Netflix for 50 million or something like that, which is just crazy.
Yeah, another great example is, if anyone's ever been to London, like the black cabs in London, there's so much regulation around them and so many different elements. You'd have thought that they would never be disrupted. And then, of course, Uber came in and disrupted the entire system by being more available, having the technology based on GPS. And now black cabs have basically got themselves onto the Uber platform because that's the only way that they can survive. So there's almost no industry that is not ripe for disruption.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember when I was living in Japan as well. Uber was not allowed in Japan when I was there, but that's exactly what happened. The cabs started using the app, and it was so much easier to order the cabs, and obviously have them drive you around because they never knew where to take you, and they had no map, and there was obviously, if there was a language barrier, it was even worse. So yeah, that's right. If the market will speak if there's a good disruption.
Celia, I've just got one extra point to add on imposter syndrome, because I think I really empathize with that, and I meet many of the founders that we work with struggle with imposter syndrome. But it brings its own strengths with it. So it encourages you to be more curious. And as long as you're prepared to get out of the building and be curious and have conversations, and lots of conversations, it's those insights that you'll pick up from those conversations that will give you the confidence to overcome that imposter syndrome. So use it as a superpower.
That's right. Yeah, I always just like to remind people as well, it's not going to go away before you take action. Like some people think it's like a disease you can treat and then you can start your startup.
I'm not sure that it ever goes away.
That's it.
I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, worked with thousands of startups, but I'm not Paul Graham, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a big roller coaster, and you'll find that as soon as you start taking action, you'll feel better and it will go away a bit because you understand more now and you've got a bit of direction, and then you'll learn something and realize, oh my gosh, there's still so much I don't know, and then it will hit you again, and it just goes like that. So just learn to live with the discomfort. And know that you're not the only one. Next question is, how do I find early adopter customers?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this, Sarah? You're
yeah, I'm happy to. This is probably my core area of expertise.
Your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So just so we're clear on who early adopter customers are, they are people who are potentially a niche kind of customer segment. They have a problem that you think that you're able to solve. They know they have the problem, and they're either willing to pay to solve it or already paying to solve it. And most importantly, they're willing to work with an unknown startup because the problem is so compelling for them. We call it a pants on fire problem, that they just have to work with you because there is no other solution. And if you think back to our time, Kirk, when you first started LeapSheep, people were paying to have you and a whiteboard teaching them concepts that you knew in your head because they knew that they did not have the path and the framework to get to product market fit and then scale. So if this is you, how do you find those early adopter customers? Now, typically, you start with an idea or a hypothesis for the problem that you think you can solve. The next step is all around segmenting your market in order to come up with all of the different types of people in different industries, ages, particularly focused around the problem and where the problem might be the greatest and the most impactful and causing the most pain, and spend as much time as you possibly can segmenting to find where the problem is most compelling and not being solved by existing solutions. And typically that is on the edges. So for example, Celia, you recently did a newsletter on Canva and how that started as a solution for volunteer students and parents creating yearbooks in a high school because it was such a compelling problem that it caught people out every single year. Now, that is a really strange niche. Once you have that hypothesis, and you can do some objective analysis in order to come up with that. Again, this is part of a LeapSheep framework, but I won't focus too much on it now. Once you have that hypothesis, go out and talk to as many people who will talk to you. And start with it saying, explaining your why. Like, why are you so passionate about solving this problem for them? But then listen. And we call this user research. And it's really all around, what does success look like for them, whether it's in their life, in their job, whatever the context is. How are they spending their day? What are their jobs to be done that they're already doing? And then what's holding them back? What's stopping them from being successful? And then just listen and ask curious questions in order to get to the nub of exactly what those biggest challenging problems are. And then once you've got those kind of answers, then you can ask, what's the impact? How often is this a problem? And then that really helps you to understand the problem. And you want to do this with as many people as you can who will talk to you. And the great thing is that often people love to talk about their challenges and their problems. And once you've been able to get a couple of those conversations, you can ask them for people for introductions, like, do you know anyone else for this scenario? And finding those and finding patterns of problems there, that's what gives you an indicator that you're onto something. And they also lead you to a path where you can go back to them. Once you've done, we typically say no fewer than 10 of these kind of conversations, but really as many as you possibly can. Once you've found patterns, you can then put that together in a user research report, represent that back to the people that you spoke with, and then also say to them, look, you've told us these are the challenges that you faced. This is our idea of our first solution or first MVP, which is how we specifically think we could help you to overcome those kind of challenges, and get feedback on it. Keep it scrappy so that they've got the opportunity to actually say, yeah, this would work for me, but actually this wouldn't. And then, of course, it's a great on-ramp to finding paying early adopter customers. And so it's quite a detailed framework, but follow those steps, and it is the surest way you have to finding those early adopter customers.
Yeah.
Such a good example we had last week, where a founder that we've been working with for a while has been through this process, did their user research, did their solution concept validation with the same group of people, had the second meeting, and then got their first 3 customers, and absolutely stunned to their amazement. They're like, these customers want to buy my solution.
Yeah, exactly. And I would just say that my biggest thing that I always find myself emphasizing, with our clients and, any startup founder that I talk to, is the user research process is not a box ticking exercise. It is fundamental to your go-to-market strategy. It's fundamental to getting to product market fit. And I just meet too many founders who every single week I'm on strategy sessions with founders who have built an app, published it, launched it, published it in the App Store, and they've paid a marketing agency to launch it, and they paid a software development agency to build this app, and literally 0 people are buying it. And it's like, because you built something that you thought was a good idea, but no one else agrees with you, or maybe they do, but it needs a few tweaks to become a non-negotiable for people to actually buy it. Right.
The whole market research and user research phase sounds so simple.
Simple.
We've all done this sort of stuff. If you've been to uni and done projects, or high school and done projects, it sounds simple, but the way you do it is really important. And like, simple thing like your market segmentation model has to be based on customer jobs to be done. If you don't have a jobs to be done based market segmentation model, you're not segmenting your market based on the problem. Having a demographics or a firmographics based model is just a proxy for problems. You really have to know what those problems are.
That's right. And I'll just explain that term jobs to be done as well, because I know when I entered the startup world, I had no idea what that meant. Jobs to be done is, for example, great example is Uber. When Uber was disrupting the taxi industry, they had to analyze the jobs to be done by the customer when it came to ordering the taxi, right? So that means, okay, picking up your phone, dialing the taxi number, waiting for the operator to come on, then telling the address to the operator, spelling anything out if they can't understand what you're saying, right? Waiting for the taxi to come, getting in the taxi, giving the taxi directions because they don't know where to go, or they're driving you around the long way, getting to the destination, having to pull out your money, pull out your cards, pull out your cash. Oh, you don't take card. Okay, let me see if I've got enough cash. Okay, la la la. That whole dance. That's jobs to be done when it comes to solving a problem. And if you can solve a problem in a way that takes away that friction of all the jobs to be done, that's how you're onto a good thing.
Yeah.
Next question is, this is a bit of a challenging one, but I think, Kirk, you're up to the task. Talking about that problem of developers building you the wrong app. Someone has said, can't you just use the Agile methodology, and that stops that problem from occurring?
Yeah, yes and no. So absolutely, you want to use the lean and agile methodologies when you're building your startup, because that's going to help you be more capital efficient and be agile to pivot as you get new learnings. You can pivot very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, when we hear people talk about agile, the scope of what gets managed in agile is just the software solution.
Yeah.
Right. So you can end up with a fully agile software team that's using DevOps best practices and doing daily releases of software, and you can still have a failed startup.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it's not enough just to have a great solution or a great product to build a startup. You have to build a great business model.
Yeah.
And so all of the decisions about what is the market segment that we were just talking about that you should be targeting, the decisions about what are the jobs to be done that you're going to solve for and what are you not going to solve for, the decision about how you're going to market and sell to those people to attract them and then convince them to put their money down. All of those things have to be met with an agile based framework as well, because if you approach them with a waterfall based framework, which so many startups do this, so many smart agile developers do this when they build their software, and then in a moment of waterfall weakness, they ring up a marketing agency and say, I've built my software now, can you now build a marketing plan for this? Which is the antithesis of agile and lean. So the short answer is if you understand how to put agile and lean together in a framework to build the entire company so that everything is inside that feedback loop and everything is being customer centric and customer driven, every decision, then yes, you can use agile, and that's what we teach. But if you don't have that framework and your agile is constrained to just one small part of the company, you're likely to fail.
You can't half use it. Yeah. Can you just explain that term waterfall in plain language?
Waterfall is the type of project management methodology we think of for things like building a house or wedding planning, where we've done these things so many times before. There's not a lot of innovation involved. You know what happens. The foundation's got to be poured before you can put the frame in the house, before the roof can go on, before the walls and the windows can go in. And so we can spend time and energy building a really good plan, high quality plan, and then we can execute that plan. And if we don't spend time doing a high quality plan, then our project is probably going to go over scope or over budget. And so that works in certain instances. But when you're innovating, the problem is that you just can't plan ahead because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And the customers can't tell you what they want because they don't know either. So you have to make a bunch of intelligent guesses and feel your way forward and make corrections along the way. And that's what Agile is brilliant at.
Yeah, great. Someone has asked, with regards to validating an idea to take to market, they've said, what about going the MVP route? Can't you use an MVP to validate who your customers are / what product you should build?
Can I take that one?
Sure.
So absolutely, you can take the MVP route. I will just link it back into the answer that I gave, that we talked about around, having that hypothesis of your early adopter customers, having that compelling pants on fire problem that you think you found, doing your user research. And then once you've done that user research, so you have patterns of problems, not just like an individual person has a problem, because that's a project, not a product. And then going back with an MVP, and really crucial here, the MVP, you may have ideas for version 100 of your product, like an Amazon or an Airbnb now, but really crucial is for that first MVP, what is the minimum that you can build or show that gives value to the customer with that pants on fire problem to help new functions, building features into every day. Hundreds of founders going wrong is they're trying to build version 100 when that first MVP just needs to be what's the smallest thing you can build that delivers value that a customer will pay for, so that you can start to get feedback and understand what works, what doesn't, how they use it, how they tell other people about it, how they tell you what they need. Because if you build an all singing, all dancing first MVP, like it's almost impossible to actually go anywhere from it, because there's so many functions, so many features. People don't really know who it's for. It's not for them. It's not solving their specific compelling pants on fire problem.
Yeah,
so that's the bit I'd say.
There's so many ways that this can trip you up. Just a couple of things to add in is what you're talking about there, Sarah, is largely got to do with your market segmentation. If you're not really deeply understanding how to segment and how to find segments of the market with a smaller subset of needs, then doing the MVP thing is really hard. And I see a lot of people coming at the MVP problem from the product side, and they get on a whiteboard in a room and go, what's the feature set that we can build? And that feature set should be totally driven by market need. It should be a market-driven conversation, not a product-driven conversation. So that's really important. The other thing is that MVP as a concept is so misunderstood. Really, what an MVP is just a step in a process to co-develop your product with your customer. And so doing an MVP really means launching a small version of your product, as Sarah just explained, to a small number of people, taking on board the feedback from those group of people, and then releasing the next iteration, solve the problems that you've learned about from the first set of paying users. You repeat that iterative process several times, you will converge on and co-develop with the market a product that can get to product market fit. Unfortunately, so many people believe that MVP is building a product and launching it and trying to scale your company from there, and that always ends in disaster. Mostly ends in disaster.
That's right. And no matter your solution concept, it's just so important to do that, use the market research and the user research first. Because you can't just build a product and work from there. Like, hey, let's work from here and see if this is a good idea. It's like, no, you need to do these key stages before you even look at building a product.
That's such a good point, Celia. Because what you're trying to achieve here, it's useful to go back to first principles. You're trying to manage your risk, and you're trying to use the least amount of capital as possible to figure out the answer to the question of what should I build. Because startups mostly fail not because they can't build their solution. It's because they don't know what to build, and they end up building the wrong thing. And so the way to manage that risk is to go through this MVP process, do short iterations, things in front of the customers. And usually, like I'd say, 95+% of the time, the user research, the market research, the user research, the solution concept path is the most capital efficient, least risk path. Every now and again, you come across a use case for building a startup where it's actually cheaper to build the product and launch the product and test it, rather than doing that all those research steps. But that is so rare. I can't tell you how often. It's just not the case. And I think the wisdom is that, because we see this from Silicon Valley, and you see a lot of people there say, "Well, just build it and launch it and put it in the App Store and see how many people you get." And generally, that's a terrible idea because you don't know why people are buying. You don't know the context because you haven't spoken to them.
No data.
And you can end up with thousands of users, and you can end up with this big boat anchor around you that's stopping you from going forward because now you've got paying users and you still don't really understand anything about them.
Yeah, and I've heard a myth recently as well. I don't know where this came from, but I've seen it around a little bit in the last couple of months that, you know, the startup building culture is different in the US, i.e. Silicon Valley, compared with like Europe and Australia, etc., which I'm sure is true in a lot of different ways. But the difference that I've seen pointed out is that, oh yeah, you know, in the US they just go speed is what's valued, right? But whereas in Europe, you know, like more planning and preparation is valued, kind of thing. It's like it does not matter where you are, what culture you're in, you know, what country you're in, what funding you even have, like you must do your pre-revenue market validation. It's not optional if you wish to succeed. You know, you can roll the dice, you can try your luck, but why would you do it if you really wanted to get this thing off the ground? And people think, oh, market research, user research, it'll take too long. It doesn't have to take long. It can, but it doesn't have to take long at all. It doesn't.
Yeah, 100%.
Next question.
If it is taking a long time, it might be because there isn't a problem in that particular market. Like if people aren't talking to you, if you can't get people's time who you think are your customers, that is a pretty good indicator that you are not onto the right market segment and you should pick another one.
That's right. Or you might just be discovering things that you did not expect to discover in these interviews, and it's requiring you to do more and more and more to validate, to try and get a pattern of, okay, here are the same problems, right? It's okay if it doesn't, there's no arbitrary time limit on how long it should take, but it doesn't have to take long. And if you do it, it's going to dramatically decrease the overall amount of time that it takes to build your startup. You're just not getting to do the flashy bells and whistles stuff first, which everyone wants to do because everyone wants to impress. But impressing doesn't usually lead to the right result. Next question is, and this is one's really important. And, you know, we've sort of been talking about this the whole time, but I think it's very important to define what a go-to-market strategy actually is. So someone has said, could you please give good examples of building a go-to-market strategy before building the product? So we've sort of been doing that throughout this discussion, but I think it's just beyond crucial to define what a go-to-market strategy is, because what I have seen a lot in the startup space is people thinking it's a launch strategy, like a marketing launch strategy, which it is absolutely not. And it's not just a go-to-market strategy doesn't just involve marketing. It involves all the pre-revenue market validation stuff that we've been talking about. And if you label and talk about go-to-market strategy in isolation, and you're just talking about marketing in isolation, you are doing a massive disservice to people that need proper information. So go ahead, let's hear it. What's a proper definition of a go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, it's such an important thing. I think to set the context for this, you know, if you're building a startup, you have to be in a market that's generally global and large to get the upside benefit and cover the risk that you're taking. And you know, any VC will tell you that. So you've got to have this large global vision, and you've got to be able to talk to that in enough specifics. But you can't attack that entire global market all at once. You have to attack it in stages, and the go-to-market strategy is about how do you attack that large global market opportunity in stages. And so it's all about coming up with a segmentation model for your market where you can enter one segment at a time, and you can win that first segment. We call that a beachhead, and that first segment that you go into, that beachhead, is all about choosing the very best segment to go into as the first opportunity. And what does best mean? Best is not the biggest. Best is not the highest profit. Best is not customers that will shout the most from the rooftops, or the best brand marks to have on your testimonial sheet. Best is the segment that is going to allow you to create the most momentum with the least risk and the least cost. Because for people to believe that you can actually build this company, they want to see traction or momentum. And so choosing a segment that is easy to get into to show people, to say, look, this is working. This idea, this vision that I have for this company I've got a product and I've got paying customers. Look, this is working. And it's that momentum that will give you more resources. It's the momentum that will get investors excited. It's momentum that will get potential employees excited. It's the momentum that will get future customers excited. So it's all about choosing that right first segment that we call beachhead. As you mentioned, Celia, it's all about doing all of those things: the market research, the user research, the solution concept validation to figure out what is the right MVP, what is the right product for this segment. And obviously, to know if this is the right segment, you often have to do this exercise with several candidates before you can say, well, this is the best one, and I know that because I've looked at the others, and here are the reasons why the others are more difficult and more challenging and shouldn't be the first segment. And so it's an iterative process, and building that go-to-market strategy so you know exactly what the definition of the segment is, exactly what the right kind of marketing approach is to get to those people, because different segments will have different marketing approaches that you need in order to get to the customers within that segment. And so that's why marketing is such a critical aspect if you go to market strategy. But at the same time, if you're not building exactly the feature set to solve the jobs to be done for that market segment, then of course you're not going to be able to create fans and advocates. And so the product team has to be equally involved in the go-to-market. And I see so few startups that have all those pieces together, where the marketing team, product management really understands what a go-to-market is and how to choose a beachhead, and the product managers and the developers are working together to build the feature set to support that go-to-market strategy. So it's really the whole thing.
100%. Like, I can tell you from personal experience, I spent 5 years running a marketing business and building people's organic marketing strategies with them and for them. But I never called it a go-to-market strategy because there was no pre-revenue market validation work. It was, you're bringing me your service, and it was just services for me. You're bringing me your service. We are going to market it together. But if someone brought me a software product and said, hey, market this, I would. But who knows what the results would be, because we have no idea if it's the right product or not. And so it's a total waste of time talking about, like, oh, what are you going to do to market your product if you haven't talked about and shown how you've mitigated your risk when it comes to building the right product? It's a total waste of time, right? So in terms of like good examples, we love our Australian example, Melanie Perkins from Canva. She's one of the best examples. We've already talked about her, but we'll just do it again briefly. 19-year-old student from Western Australia she was when she started building Canva, and the pants on fire problem she stumbled across was thanks to her mother, who was a teacher, whose job it was to create the school yearbook every year. And it was arduous because all she had to create it was complicated graphic design programs like Illustrator and things like that. I remember trying to learn that as a kid and failing. You guys will know, what my graphic design skills are like. But this was a big pants on fire problem, because the teachers were like, oh God, every year, it's like this comes around so fast. And again, I have to juggle everyone's emails, juggle all the files, files coming in left, right, and center from all these emails, and then trying to work this out on Illustrator, which for some reason is just so difficult every time. And Melanie was mentoring volunteer students to, try and help her, but they were taking a whole semester to even just learn where all the buttons are. So she thought, gosh, wouldn't it just be great if there was a simple like drag and drop template they could use? But she was 19, she didn't have any money, and she had absolutely no way of taking on Adobe or Microsoft, right? So she sort of by necessity accidentally did the right thing, right? She picked a beachhead, which was solving her mother's problem, which was how can I make this super easy for teachers to make their school yearbooks? And the first iteration of the software was a very, very, very simple plug and play, drag and drop yearbook template, right? And what she did was she let teachers use the software for free if they printed their yearbooks at her printing press, which was in her mother's lounge room. And so in the first year of doing this, she had 16 schools printing their yearbooks with her, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And that is, she exhausted that segment, which is how she got to product market fit. And then, of course, naturally, everyone was asking, oh, well, I'm a business, I want to publish a white paper. Can I do that on that? And, oh, I'm an academic researcher, I need to publish a paper nicely. Can I do it on that? Right. And that is how she mastered segment by segment by segment by segment. And that is, that's a go-to-market strategy, is developing a hypothesis about what your beachhead market segment is going to be, doing your user research, so talking to school teachers that are not your mum and seeing if they have the same problem, or is it just your mum? Actually, all other school teachers are great at using Illustrator. You're just terrible. Finding out if it's actually a problem. And then developing a solution concept. So she didn't try to invent what we know as Canva now right from the bat, because that would have failed. How would she have had the resources to build that?
Exactly.
So she mastered it segment by segment by segment by segment. She's a perfect example of a go-to-market strategy.
In fact, I think every single startup or rather every single unicorn has followed that go-to-market strategy. You just don't think about it now because you can see, that they're serving mass markets, but every single successful unicorn has got that. I've never come across one that hadn't. So I'm happy to be challenged if I'm wrong.
That's right. I always love to be wrong, because there's always something to be there.
I think one of the takeaways from this is that, like the Melanie story, it's not what the vast majority of startups that are doing is they're trying to plan that go-to-market strategy and then go execute it. And that's a way harder problem than sort of stumbling into a go-to-market strategy, which is what so many of the founders that you hear about, like Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, for example, he started off with Harvard students, right? And again, like you said, Sarah, he followed the same sort of go-to-market strategy, where it was market by market by market and opening up subsequent markets with new feature sets and so on and so forth. And I think this is one of the hard things about the startup world, is we want to look to these really successful companies to go, what can we learn from them? But we can learn from them that they use these go-to-market strategies, but what we can't learn in many instances is what is the process they use to generate that go-to-market strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. And I think that, it's just really important to just remember, like, try and look at some big examples like Amazon, right? Everyone's always stunned to find out that Jeff Bezos started with just a landing page with a list of books on it and his phone number. And he was delivering books to people by hand when they rang him up and said, I want this book delivered to my door. Like, that was the first kind of solution concept of Amazon, which is hard to think about now because of the big marketplace that it is, but that is how it started. And Elon Musk is another great example, the way he's worked with Tesla.
And it's that framework that we've built out, which we call the Disruptive Innovation Journey framework. That is our framework to support founders pursue a go-to-market strategy to product market fit and then scale.
Yeah, that's right. So should I just quickly show the diagram of the DIJ? We're almost about to run out of time.
Sure, I can pop it up if that helps, Celia.
Yeah, great.
If you select there we go. And a shout out to Miguel from San Diego. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel. Cool. So as you can see, when you look at this diagram, it looks pretty overwhelming and it's like, what the heck is this, right? But this is the diagram that we've created to represent the disruptive innovation journey, i.e. how you create a go-to-market strategy. So take it away, Kirk.
Yeah, so there's 4 big stages at the top that you can see. Pre-revenue market validation. This is about the market research, the user research, and the solution concept validation that we've been talking about. And that makes sure that without building a product or without having paying customers, you can take as much risk out of the business as you possibly can and spend the least amount of money to validate your business model hypothesis. And if you can make it through those 3 stages with lots of positive signals that this business model might actually work, then the next stage is the initial pilot validation. And this is the very counterintuitive part of startup building, where you want to do things at low scale and manually to really validate that the solution that you've got is what customers will use, because often what customers will tell you that they do and what they actually do is quite different. They're very well-meaning and they're telling you honestly what they believe, but sometimes it just doesn't work out the way that they think. And so this initial pilot allows you to deliver value and take money from a customer. This is absolutely critical. The only feedback that matters is from paying customers. and the initial pilots stage is all about taking money from paying customers and delivering real value. Even if you lose money on every sale, losing a little bit of money on every sale to learn whether you've got a great product is a really, really good exchange of value for you as the startup. The example I like to give is, imagine if you decided to launch at scale your product immediately without doing these manual things. It would mean if you're a car company building a production line to produce a model of a car that you might then find is a failure in the market. And so all of that cost of building that production line is wasted capital. Instead, what you would do is you would hand build cars and sell them, and you'll lose money on every car. But after selling, half a dozen cars, whether you're hitting the mark, whether you're close to the mark, whether you're way off the mark. And so your decision of whether you should press forward and scale and build that production line or fundamentally change the car is actually a really good financial decision, and it's so counterintuitive. And so that's initial pilot validations. And then once you get the signal that it's really worth trying to scale this business, then you can go into the product market fit validation and start to really prove out that you can get retention from users. I call this a gym membership problem. It's one thing to be able to show that you can create value and the customers believe that you've got value, but it's another thing to retain them and keep them engaged while they've got so many other challenges and problems that they're dealing with as human beings. So you've got to solve that problem. And then you've got to prove that your marketing engine that so far has been working with small numbers of people can really scale up and work with large numbers of people. And you've got to get your unit economics right. And once you get through that phase, then you really are at the point where you're now just pre-product market fit, and you've got all the signals to know that you're going to get to product market fit. You are reliably generating fans and advocates. You're reliably doing so in a cost-effective way. You're reliably producing enough revenue, and that's at the point where you're ready to scale up and pour capital in, pour fuel on the fire, and really scale.
So great. And actually, we're just about to end this because we have gone for an hour. We did say we wouldn't go over an hour, but what I will say is it's really important the product market fit definition as well. So that's something that we come across all the time with founders, is that they don't understand, first of all, don't understand that they even need to get to product market fit. So they're not even reverse engineering that journey for themselves. So they're not even setting themselves up for success, right? Or the second thing is they've sort of cottoned on, like, oh yeah, product market fit. Yeah, I need to get to product market fit. But the definition of product market fit is almost always not the right thing. Yeah. So we always like to outline the 5 criteria that we have for getting to product market fit, which is number 1, that you've created a product that solves a pants on fire problem for a specific group of customers, which is your beachhead. So you remember the beachhead example that we used before with Melanie Perkins from Canva. Her beachhead was school teachers that have the job of creating yearbooks, right? So that's how specific a beachhead is. It's so specific, right? Then number 2 is that those customers, i.e. in Melanie's case, the teachers, have become raving fans and repeat buyers. So they use this software every year. Number 3 is that those raving fans have also become active advocates. So in her case, the teachers, they're going to their teacher conferences around the country and telling all the other teachers what they do, right? And the other teachers are like, oh, we need this, we want this, right? So it's word of mouth marketing, and you're not trying to throw a Hail Mary at a marketing agency or paid ads to try and get some sales, right? Number 4 is that obviously is creating a positive feedback loop, and you'll be observing profit and exponential growth. And last of all, number 5 is you don't feel the need to push your product onto the market with marketing. It's not that you don't do marketing, of course you do, but you're not worried about, what levers can we pull? How can we make this marketing work? We're not making sales. You're not in that frame of mind. The frame of mind you're in is, wow, we need to build this company and build our team so that we can meet all this demand, right?
Yeah.
That's what product market fit is. And you need to understand what it is and those milestones along the disruptive innovation journey to give you the highest chance of getting there.
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
Great. All right. Well, wow, that hour actually went well for me. It went really, really quickly. We didn't even make a dent in these questions. There's still like 50 more. So we're going to try and do one of these every 2 weeks. So at the same time on Friday mornings, 7:30 a.m. Adelaide, 8 a.m. Sydney, which, if I remember correctly, is 1 p.m. California, 4 p.m. New York. and 9 p.m. London.
Yeah,
UK.
that's right.
Yeah. So, we always encourage you to send us your questions in the meantime. You can jump on if you're brave enough. Jump on and because it's nice to jump on with us and actually get a bit of an in-depth answer if you're, if you want to bring your case study to us, your startup case study to us and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, where my blind spots be. Super happy to do that. Really excited to talk to you guys again in a couple of weeks.
Shout out to JC. Thanks for joining.
Oh, JC.
And Celia, if people want more in-depth help, we also run strategy sessions, don't we, for startup builders? And anyone can find that in the link in any of our bios. Just request a strategy session.
That's right. So if you go to the visit my website link at the top of my posts, or if you go onto Kirk's or Sarah's profiles, you can visit the link in bio. That will take you to the link to book a strategy session, and let's get you on the path to product market fit.
Yeah, fabulous. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.
See ya.